Okay, so this video is basically a no water change tank confession disaster, but I'm not giving up. So yeah, there was a comment, hey, check your nitrates. You're probably high because you're not doing any water changes. And as embarrassing as it is, I don't know why. Basically, well, what was, I didn't have the vial. I lost the vials. I lost the color charts. I had all the chemicals, so I had to go out and buy like a $12 to get the vial. And then I just went online and found the color chart. Not that you need it. It's basically, if it's red, you got to do a water change. If it's orange-ish red, you're probably okay. The fish are fine. I don't see any ailments. But at this point, you're asked to do a water change. For the sake of the fish. But anyway, so yeah, and it's got me thinking about a few different things. Ammonia is 0, nitrite is 0. I don't know if testing these under certain conditions makes a difference as far as whether it's temperature or pH or whatever, but they're basically showing up 0. I did them a few times. I shake the vials. I don't exactly have the directions. I went online and just watched them being done. But anyway, so those are 0. And what I'm thinking is that the plants are definitely not pulling this out fast enough, obviously. But I'm sure as hell producing a lot of it pretty, fairly well. And what I'm thinking is the ammonia and nitrite are basically being converted instantaneously. I think between a 207, the under gravel, and then just the fact that there's bacteria in the tank, living on everything in there, I don't think these two things really stand a chance. That's pretty obvious. Because there's so much of this, and there's been no water change, and these are showing up 0, it's safe to say that I'm doing a really good job getting rid of these, because the end result is a lot of this. The only way to get a lot of this is that this must be working. So that's that problem solved, and I don't think that really is a problem with so much advantages in technology and the way that filters are set up and the substrates are set up. I don't really think in a tank like this with just Tetra, even if I have 35 fish, 40 fish, in a 29 gallon, I don't think that these are even a part of the equation, except for one thing. I need these to be produced so that I can pull the oxygen out to the point where this can be digested out. The only way to pull oxygen out of the water column is to create enough ammonia, then to create enough nitrate, that you'll oxidize the nitrate. You'll oxidize, you'll oxidize the nitrite, and then that'll pull the oxygen out. And then once there's enough oxygen removed, and the end result is this, the bacteria that are after that process, assuming they haven't been released back into the tank, now you're in an oxygen reduced environment, and you've just made this available. The bacteria are going to have no choice but to pull this out. The problem is the flow rate is so high that at no point is any of that water depleted of oxygen. Even if this is pulling out the O2, it's not happening. Even if we're creating this and you're losing that oxygen, it's not happening fast enough, so that, or intensely enough that you're pulling out all that oxygen, which is quite a bit. I'd imagine the atmosphere, you got 21% oxygen. I'd imagine that the diffusion inside the aquarium is got to be something similar. So that's quite a bit of oxygen that you need to pull out of the environment, out of that water column, so that there's nothing left for the bacteria to digest and get their oxygen from here. So basically the filters are too good. The flow rate is too high. They're too effective at removing ammonia. and maybe even the aquarium itself is too effective at removing ammonia, we're never creating, we're not producing enough ammonia and digesting it fast enough in a confined enough environment to give this even a chance at being able to be the next thing on the menu. So the next thing is either to rethink the under gravel, and I don't mean pull the under gravel out, because actually I think the under gravel might even be an advantage, but maybe to just basically just turn it off. Maybe cap one of the lift tubes, and then leave one of the other lift tubes open, and that might help. Or just cap both lift tubes for now, knowing that there's essentially that plenum that's underneath there, which is creating some level of diffusion circulation underneath that substrate, that maybe there'll be a reduced oxygen environment down there. But basically I'm thinking to get the ammonia levels up and to restart this process in another way, either to have the plants convert the ammonia right away and then not even be inside of this nitrogen cycle, which I don't know is exactly true, but I'm under the assumption that if the plants digest the ammonia right off the bat, that we don't actually enter into this cycle. It's a completely different cycle. They outgas different elements. These are not being produced during the plant's digestion of ammonia. And I know there's different types of ammonias and stuff like that, and I'll look into that a little bit further. But anyway, so one thing is just to get right out of don't even give your filter a chance to start this cycle. Let the plants take it out instantly, or let them be the first ones to take it out, or basically turn this off, which is that's what I did now. Is I put that down to a trickle, and I'm going to run that at a trickle. I don't need mechanical filtration. Obviously I don't need chemical filtration, because these two things are gone. They don't exist in the aquarium. And that might even be a bad thing to be able to get this cycle to start itself. I might actually need some ammonia, need some nitrite, deplete the oxygen inside that canister, and then stand a half a chance at pulling that out. Or I basically let that trickle, or just get rid of it, or rebuild the entire center so that so what we would do is you would take all the baskets out and you would pack it with a completely different media, remove the baskets completely, and then what would happen is you would run the 10 watts full, or maybe not quite full, maybe half the rate, and that the water would circulate. It would come right down and then go right back out, because you dismantled the flow rate, how it would normally flow, because you pulled all the baskets out. It would only be filtering. It would go right in, right out at the very top of that filter. And then what you would do is the very top of that filter would be doing the ammonia and the nitrite, and then deeper inside the bottom of that filter you might be doing the nitrate, because there's no flow, and these things are pulling the oxygen out that at the bottom and you're not circulating that water down into the bottom. You're just circulating at the very top of the filter. Then the very bottom of the filter would be doing hopefully the nitrate. Me personally, I think the flow rate's still too high, and it's not exactly the direction that I think it needs to take. What I think it needs to happen is, at a very, very slow flow rate, water would come in, it would be digested of the ammonia and the nitrate, and I mean a very slow flow rate, right? Like basically an airline tube, not quite dripping, but basically maybe half the flow rate of an airline tube that you could force through an airline tube, maybe half of that. That's the flow rate I'm thinking in the 207. Or in your custom-made filter, and it would flow completely through the whole volume of that filter and then back out the other end. And then what comes out the back of the other end should be depleted of ammonia, depleted of nitrite, depleted of oxygen, and depleted of nitrate. So that's the only thing I can think of, because nothing else really can create that equation. Whether even a plenum, I think has a better chance. And I'm not, I haven't really thought about it too much, but what I'm imagining is you haven't depleted enough oxygen to make this the only thing on the menu. There's too much circulation still taking place. Not only that, but even if you reduce the environment so thoroughly, then how did you introduce ammonia without introducing oxygen? How did you introduce nitrite without inducing oxygen? Introducing oxygen. So this cycle needs to happen sequentially. It needs to happen first ammonia, pull out the oxygen. By pulling out the oxygen, you create this. You add that extra oxygen, NO2 to NO3. There's no oxygen left. There has to be no oxygen left. Otherwise, it's not going to prefer this, because it'll just prefer oxygen, or anything else for that matter. This is the last thing on the menu. And then once you got rid of the oxygen and you gave it absolutely no choice left, it has no choice. It must utilize this or not respirate. And then it finally dismantles this into something less harmful, and then it outgasses. But if it's not happening sequentially, it can't happen in a broken system, because the second you break the system, you just put oxygen in between these two things, and now it doesn't need this anymore. So it needs to be all in one line. The only way to do all that in one line is in one filter, in one fell swoop. Anyway, yeah, and here's the other problem. If the 207's running, it digests the ammonia so fast, you already broke the cycle, right? Or the filter's running, and now you got these two, still broke the cycle, right? And so if the flow rate's too high and you don't have enough ammonia to even start the cycle, you're not even in the cycle. So anyway, this is all kind of, I'm having all these revelations around how to set this up. One idea I have, and I'll just show you real quick, is this is a leftover canister that I'm not using. It's an old Magnum canister. And okay, so you see that I filled that up. I'll just put that down. Let me grab the top real quick. This is the same theory I was talking about with the 207. So basically, if you dismantle the guts of the filter, you have an inlet and you have an outlet right next to each other, right? So there's no circulation. It comes in, and then the path of least resistance is to shoot its way back out that way. And so the circulation will just be in like this upper part of that chamber I just showed you, and there's no reason for it. There's no mechanism forcing it down into the rest of that substrate that is inside that canister. Now what you would do is you would do it at such a low flow rate that you would bring your ammonia in, obviously with oxygen, because the only way to bring new ammonia in is to bring it in with new oxygen. There's no other way you can bring ammonia in without introducing oxygen. So they come in together. The ammonia gets converted by the bacteria into the NO2. I'm assuming that there's a consumption of oxygen from here to here, but then there's also another consumption of oxygen through this process to here. So there might even be two phases in which you lose oxygen to this process, right? But you'll never lose oxygen unless you do these processes first. Once these processes have happened, now the idea is that is a reduced oxygen environment. You give the bacteria no choice but to pull this out. But there's a new problem. This is only happening in the upper layer of that filter of that media that I just showed you. There's no reason at that point for the water then to just leave and never participate in the nitrate part of the equation. and then new water, and then new fresh water comes in with new ammonia, but also with new oxygen. So we never really achieve. There'll be some of the achievement, because what will happen is this will hopefully become a mat, and below that mat is this bacteria, because they took all the oxygen out, and they'll release some of this too, and some of that will kind of diffuse naturally into that thing. But there's a new problem, is that we're not really, the path isn't a direct line from one to the next to the next. That's not what we're doing. We're just like circulating within this pattern, and then hoping through just diffusion that we're diffusing some of that down into that deeper substrate. We're kind of relying on that, but the problem is we're also introducing new oxygen, and we're getting less and less of ammonia. Without ammonia, we're not even in this equation. So we can't, this is like a commodity that we can't digest and just send back into the aquarium without forcing the reduced oxygen environment into this new equation. Because if we do that, when new ammonia comes in, so does new oxygen, right? And so it needs to be a cascade, a direct line through those ingredients. Otherwise, we're not doing it efficiently enough, and we're kind of breaking the cycle before this is even given a chance. Anyway, so I think that's why this is such a conundrum, is to get all these to be in alignment. These are obviously the most dangerous. We have heavy fish keepers, so there's a lot of fixation on this, and that's why you have the 207. This is also pretty dangerous, and with the way that people keep aquariums, this is also really important. This can linger, obviously. This can linger longer, but apparently is ultimately a detriment to the fish as well. So it needs to be dealt with, and that's the water change, right? But I'm wondering if I don't think I'm not really a part of the equation with the big fish keepers, with the heavy feeding. I'm not really participating in that. This is my only problem. I'm more like, oh, for me, this is an easy thing. You know, I spent too much money on too many fancy filters for this to be a problem for me with the kind of fish keeping style that I do. But for me to be the no water change guy, I got to solve this. Otherwise, you know, I'm just not changing my water. I didn't really bring a solution to a problem. I'm just pretending like I don't have a problem. And like I said, there's no obvious signs that the fish are in trouble. And maybe I'm just not really good at seeing those signs. And there is signs. But anyway, I just did a change. I turned that filter to a near trickle. And so I'm going to run that at a trickle for as long as I can, assuming that there's no problems. I don't need mechanical filtration. I have a backup mechanical filtration if I need it. The water's very, very clean as far as visually, you know, it's basically crystal clear. So, and I didn't even have mechanical in that in the first place. I was never even running mechanical filtration in there. I was just all biologic. I have it on the under gravel, and I run a backup mechanical filtration, exclusively mechanical filtration, every now and then. I actually only run it to keep the water inside the filter clean enough that I don't like develop some sort of funk in an unused filter that's attached to the aquarium. So I only even really run it just to circulate and keep it going. I could probably even just take it off. I have it there just because I think it's really cool to turn a Magnum 350 on, you know, for 2 hours a day and get this thing crystal clear. But anyway, so I'm gonna back that off, and I mean to a trickle, right? I am hoping I can get some of the ammonia to come back up, and I can then have it, because it's such a low flow, I'm hoping that I can actually complete this cycle, because right now there's a break in this cycle. I'm doing this, and I'm only doing this because I've never created the conditions to do this. And what I'm trying to do now by turning that on really, really low with that valve is bring this into alignment and then get rid of it. Now, I'd imagine that this would need to happen. You can't have an excess of nitrogen already and then hope to enter into this, because it's like a net sum loss, right? Like, these work, had it been doing that the whole time, I wouldn't have an excess of nitrogen. So I don't know if I can actually walk this backwards. I don't think I can, honestly, because I don't know, maybe the math checks out. Maybe for like every molecule of this, you can pull 4 molecules of this, you know what I mean? So then you could walk it backwards. Or if this needs to happen like in a cycle, so what you would do is you would run your filter, you would pull all this out, right? And then after, you would do that for a week, and then for a week and a half, you dial it back down, and then this starts being taken care of, right? And it just goes like this. You just bounce it in and out of pulling these out. I don't know. Like, so that's kind of what I'm experimenting with. I'm also experimenting with setting up different styles of trickle filters to see if I can get this going. And that'll be some of the videos I'll do in the future. Basically, you guys, I'm going to keep doing this until I can get rid of this, and just say, like, how is it possible, other than the father fish method, which I think is I might just set one up just as an experiment. I'll set up a father fish tank. I'll take my high nitrate water out of this tank, and I'll immediately put it into that tank. I'll overstock it with fish, and I'll test the water and see if I can take a high nitrite environment with plenty of fish, and see if I can dial that water back down to something reasonable with different techniques, right? With different methods, other than doing a water change. I just did one, and I'll test the water now to see if I can get this a different color. And I'll probably even test my tap water just to make sure that maybe that doesn't have a ton of nitrates. I don't know, yeah, and just dial this in. But I'll do it with you guys. If I do get better results, I'll do the tests right in front of you. There's no reason for me to fake this, because it obviously makes me look bad. And I can do these tests in front of you. There's no, I don't think, having no ammonia and having no nitrate, I don't think is a scandal. If you want to see me test the water for those two in front of you, I will, but they're 0. And all my tanks have high nitrate. But yeah, so it's like the 3rd time I did this video and I messed up some stuff. That wasn't a terrible explanation of what I'm up to. And I'm going to do videos on me making different types of filters. There's no point in having a 10 watt 207 trickling when I can make some sort of trickle filter that basically does the same thing. There's no point in me running the electricity of a 207 if I'm not even using it for mechanical, and I have absolutely no problem with these two things, and it's doing nothing for me for this. There's no reason for me to even be running that, unless I can set it up in a way where this becomes a little bit more in alignment, and I can justify having it be a mechanical filter, completing this cycle and actually giving me the things I need. It's just really a glorified nitrogen maker. I mean, it's like that thing is making a ton of nitrate. That's all I can say about it, right? Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope that wasn't too much of a rant. Please comment any questions or thoughts you have or suggestions. But yeah, I'm committed to the no tank water change scenario, and I just wanted to show you guys what is, yeah, not quite what I thought. Okay, thank you.